it's going to be unique to every person.
Mm-hmm.
What's your fear? What do you think is going to happen next? What do you want to happen next? And letting her dictate, I want to go outside. I want to go take a bath. Like it just letting her express whatever she needed to express and absolutely validating her when she says, this is not fair. This is stupid.
Hi, I'm Rachel, owner of the Natural Birth Site, certified birth doula, childbirth educator, and midwife's assistant.
And I'm Tiffany Muniz, certified birth doula, lactation counselor, and midwife assistant.
Here, you'll learn all about different aspects of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum.
Remember, none of this information should take the place of your care provider and is not medical advice.
Birth is not a medical emergency.
Thanks for listening.
Hey listeners, welcome to the Natural Birth Talk. I'm your host, Rachel. Tiffany wasn't able to be here today because she is currently recovering from a 30-hour birth. So we gave her a break, but I have Cynthia Kenyon here. We are going to talk about a doula's perspective when you know mom's going to have a stillbirth. But before we get started on that, I'm going to let Cynthia introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cynthia Kenyon, and I am a doula, birth doula. I have been certified through Dona International for 3 years. And prior to that, I was a stay-at-home mom. Prior to that, I was actually a labor and delivery nurse for 12 years back in Indiana, Michigan and Indiana. And I am currently in midwifery school at the University of Cincinnati. I have 4 children. I'm married. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. And I think that's me.
You have a lot of experience in the birth world.
I do have a lot of experience in the birth world, or the birth world has captured me, I should say.
Yep. It has a way of doing that. Before we keep going, obviously I said we're talking about stillbirth, but official trigger warning here. We are continuing to talk about stillbirth in this episode. It's not going to be story so much as a doula's perspective on that, but I just wanted to give you listeners a heads up. But back to like what you said, Cynthia, birth kind of captures you.
Yeah.
And what did we say when we were talking before? It's really hard work. Birth work is really hard work. The schedule we keep is insane as doulas and on-call midwives, but it's also work that is so hard to think about walking away from.
Absolutely. It's a rewarding type of work. And I think the reward is not so much the outcome of the delivery so much as it is the reward of working with women.
Yes.
I find that's why I keep coming back to it, is because I know that there are women who need someone to just walk alongside of them and help them find their voice. And as we were talking a little bit beforehand, because we were those women, right?
Yep, absolutely.
In a previous version of ourselves, we didn't know what we know now. And the role of birth worker is absolutely an essential part of helping make sure that doesn't happen to other women.
Yep. And it's a calling.
It is a calling.
It is our calling from God.
It is. It's a deep passion of my soul. I know the Lord has planted it within me that I have loved babies my entire life, and I love women. I've been surrounded by women my entire life. And I know that that's the purpose, is just encouraging and equipping and informing. And I can't get out. Even if I wanted to quit, women find me.
Yes. Even when I'm trying to take a break for a month.
Yes. I mean, I'm always encouraging or counseling or talking to a woman about something in her world, whether it's her marriage or her faith or her children or friendships or just how do you make pizza dough? Anything. We're just always educating and informing. Yeah.
Yep. And advocating and
equipping women to be better.
Building them up.
Better.
Exactly. And I think that in a sense is going to segue us into our topic of stillbirth. you know, a lot of people think about stillbirth and they're like, I don't know how you could do that, knowing that you're going to have to experience stillbirth. And so something we haven't told you yet, audience, is Cynthia is actually Jillian's mom from our last 2 episodes. So Jillian is the one in the last 2 episodes who told her stillbirth story with subsequent home delivery. This is Jillian's mom. And Jillian's mom was there, obviously, as a mother, but as a doula as well. But this isn't the only stillbirth Cynthia has experienced after being on labor and delivery for so long.
Yeah. So, you know, when I look back again, you know, how the Lord directs your steps. When I was a nurse, I worked in a very small hospital where we maybe had 10 deliveries. It was a very rural environment. Those were my first 2 years. And then I transferred to a hospital in South Bend, Indiana, if anybody knows Notre Dame University, that's there. And I worked there for 10 years. And my role there was high risk labor and delivery. I worked with a lot of moms in, preterm labor or, preeclampsia and diabetes and things like that. And regular. But there was a season of time we made sure that women who came in with any kind of a fetal loss were not being taken care of by a nurse who was pregnant, because it was the dual complication of just being very obvious that, you know, this nurse is pregnant taking care of you while you're losing a child. And it's also hard on the nurse because she knows that and she doesn't want to transfer, you know, that guilt and the shame.
Yeah. Or worry about her own baby.
Exactly. It just all permeates that. So in a particular season, I found myself not pregnant, taking care of a lot of women who in loss, experiencing loss. And at that time, one of those people that experienced a loss, her father, the grandfather of the baby, was a philanthropist, and he gave a lot of money to the hospital and said, we need to train people to take care of women like she took care of my daughter.
Wow.
And I want her to be the chairperson of this symposium that you create. And so he paid for the daughter and I to go through a training. It was through Gunderson Lutheran Hospital in Wisconsin. It's called Resolve Through Sharing. And I absolutely would highly endorse that program. They matter of fact, they have a bereavement training coming up in August. That's the small plug for their organization. But I went to that training and got the counselor training and the coordinator training as a result of all of these losses, but specifically because this grandfather saw something and said, you need to do this. And so we created this symposium. We had great speakers that came in. We held it at University of Notre Dame campus, and I helped chair it. And, you know, at that time, I had no idea other than clinically how to care for, you know, patients and women, fathers, grandparents. About 2 months after that, I had my own miscarriage and had an extreme conflict with my soul, my spirit, my body, and went, oh my gosh. And as a result of that, that really did color how I understood grief and loss.
Wow.
And then now Catapult, that was right before I got pregnant, even with Jillian. Yeah. So now we're 27 years in advance of that whole experience of how God had...
That whole thing just ties into what we were saying about how, like, as birth workers, we want to care for moms and we want to care for people. And that's what it's about. Right. And then you were given this amazing opportunity to be able to learn how to care even better. I mean, that's just amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. And at the same time, right, then about 5 years later, we moved to St. Louis, and I hung up my nurse hat for a long while, right? And never in my wildest dream would I have ever anticipated that I would have to use that knowledge for one of my own grandchildren.
Right.
Let alone walk alongside of one of my own daughters. Now, I have anticipated that, the statistics are, 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage. So,
Right.
we've had, Liam was our 4th grandchild. And so, couple of a different daughter has had some bleeding episodes. And so, we had thought, okay, maybe there's going to be a miscarriage, and, we've
Yeah.
prepared, but there is no way to prepare
Mm-hmm.
for a stillbirth.
Right.
There just is no way to prepare. So the fact that clinically, and I'm even going to go in addition to say, and I don't know, I haven't listened to all of Jillian's the second podcast yet,
That's okay.
but
We're there.
yeah, we even have talked about how the Lord prepared her in advance because she is a childbirth educator and because she loves kind of, this whole pregnancy world. I had helped her gain a scholarship through Stillbirth Day, the organization Stillbirth Day. So she and I both participated in the Stillbirth Day modules, and she finished hers, and I still have yet to go through one module. But the fact that she herself was learning, and this is what I said to her, this is going to be such a great experience for you, Jillian, as a doula.
Mm-hmm.
You got, all that you need to know and understand about fertility and pregnancy. And this is going to help you understand how to be a pregnant mom. And then you're going to be able to use whatever you need out of all of those tools and resources to doula clients in the future, if you decide you want to someday. And I said, but I need you to know, because it's Stillbirth Day, which is a great organization for doulas to participate with, and moms, you just have to be well aware you're going to see some very triggering pictures and conversation, right? Because you're talking about loss at different stages of pregnancy. And she said, okay. And I said, so just when you see something, if you want to talk about it, let's talk through it. And so we talked through my miscarriage and all the emotions about that and the physical things. What did you see? And then, when she saw pictures. So when we came to the place where Jillian found out that she, in fact, was going to deliver a stillborn baby, we never had a conversation of, Mom, what's it going to look like?
She knew.
She knew.
And
so
audience,
the preparation was there.
Yeah. Audience, just for your reference, if you haven't listened to the story about Jillian, she was in labor, full term in labor, feeling baby move. Then all of a sudden, midwife came over to not even check on her because she was so early in labor. It's not like she would have been in a hospital at this point. She wouldn't have been admitted and she wouldn't have been monitored. But the midwife just came over to drop off a birth pool, decided to check on baby while she was there. And that's when they found out that Liam had passed on. And, I just want to give that reference for if we're talking about it and you guys haven't listened to that other episode yet. So,
and let me just speak to that too, because I think in the heart of every mother is the concern for the child, right? And I know, because I had several other clients at the same time surrounding Jillian that were still pregnant. And we had to talk about, how do you feel? What fears are coming up? We always carry a fear within us about what, the what ifs, what could happen, right? But it's extremely rare.
Yes.
And I honestly, I was going to look up, and I feel like it's less than 5% of full term and in a stillbirth.
I want to say it's like 0.5%.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say 1%, right?
It's less than 0.5% at before 41 weeks. And then or before 42 weeks. Sorry. It's like less than 0.5% at 41 weeks. And then it doubles at 42 weeks to less than 1%.
Yes. That's what I wanted to say 1%, but I didn't have the statistics in front of me. Because we as birth workers care so much about women and pregnant laboring moms, it ought not to be a consuming fear.
Right.
That you're going to lose your child. And that's not the goal of necessarily even I don't think that was Jillian's goal to put fear in anyone. It's
Right.
not my goal or yours. The point of having these conversations is to say, what happens if,
Mm-hmm.
when you get to this place, if this happens, that, you happen to be that 0.5%,
Mm-hmm.
how do you navigate it? Because
exactly.
we talk about childbirth education.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about, doing everything pregnancy and diet related and all the, spinning babies and in positioning and maneuvering, but we don't equip moms
Mm-hmm.
because who would want to have this
Right.
conversation, right? We
Mm-hmm.
often don't even want to talk to moms about what if you have to go to the OR and have an emergency cesarean delivery. I have finally started including that in my
Yeah.
my doula conversation. I call
Yeah,
it
I
Plan
do.
Z.
Yeah,
On the
that's cute.
last time that we get together, I go, okay, we're going to talk about Plan Z. If I say to you, put your face on the, mat, roll over as fast as you can, put this oxygen mask on, we're going to the OR, it is serious.
Yeah.
And I think we need to tell moms that there are those times when it is serious.
Yes.
Tell your provider, your doula, has that extreme sense of urgency, everything is fine.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But we do need to talk about stillbirth and equip people
Yeah.
for what's
So
next.
yeah, because like you said, it's incredibly rare, but it is a reality of living in this world. And
It is.
so with that being said, I mean, do you have any tips either for moms or for doulas listening? Because I know we have a lot of birth workers who listen and a lot of moms who listen. What kind of tips or just anything or things that maybe you used, phrases you said, or things you thought in the process that just helped you or helped Jillian? Hey everyone, Rachel Manns here, and today I have something I'm thrilled to share with you guys. Imagine having a treasure trove of informative, entertaining, and empowering video content about the journey to parenthood right at your fingertips. That's exactly what you get with Informed Pregnancy Plus. For less than 25 cents a day, that's a quarter, guys, you'll gain access to a vast subscription library filled with documentary films, web series, mind and body fitness programs, workshops, and courses covering fertility to parenting and everything in between. Designed for new and expectant parents, as well as pregnancy and birth professionals, Informed Pregnancy Plus is like having a trusted BFF and doctor in one, guiding you through every step of the path to and through parenthood. A few of just my favorite titles are obviously The Business of Being Born, Empowered Mama, Belly Dance for Birth, how fun is that? Ease into Sleep, the Afterbirth Plan, and the Core Connection, an extremely well-presented and informative workshop teaching you about your core and pelvic floor and how to keep them healthy. And here's the best part. For a limited time, you can gain full access absolutely free. Just visit informedpregnancy.tv to sign up. Sign up for Informed Pregnancy Plus right now. I'm not kidding, guys. It's really going to help you out. It's my prescription for your informed and empowered parenting journey, all from the comfort of your home. Visit informedpregnancy.tv. That's informedpregnancy.tv, and the link will be in the description below. Now back to the show.
Okay. I think the number one thing that has to be addressed is to give mom time.
Yes.
She absolutely does not have to make a decision right this second. Her first inclination, and I think Jillian even spoke to this, her first inclination is, okay, fine, then just give me a C-section.
Yeah, that's what she said.
But, that is an emotional response. It's a reactionary response. It's a shock response. And we need to hold space for that. We need to allow mom, we don't want to shut down any of those thoughts or words that are going to come up next. But what we want to do is create a timeline where if she is safe, if she physiologically is safe medically,
Yeah.
then if you're in a doctor's office, you do not have to go 100% to the hospital
Right.
at that moment. You can go home and pray, think about it, talk, cry. Let labor start naturally. You don't
Yeah.
have to be induced labor in that moment.
Right.
I think that is the number one thing that I would say is if the shock hits you and you don't know what to do. So you just do whatever they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jillian was very fortunate with the midwives. She had planned and prepared for a home birth. And when, the first midwife was present and evaluated her, listening to baby, looking for the ultrasound and finding no heartbeat, her next thing was to say, okay, I'm going to have a second set of eyes come and,
Second
do this
opinion.
ultrasound. And a second opinion, that second midwife arrived. And then we all gave space for Jillian and her husband, Will, to just process whatever they could process alone for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And we walked out as providers, right?
Yeah.
And so let them, don't force them to make decisions. They can't. We know that laboring women don't make decisions well anyway on the
Right.
spot. That's why we make birth plans, right? So that's the number one thing.
Yeah.
And
Because
the
she ended up
second-
changing her mind. Her first
She
instinct
did.
was to go to the hospital and get a C-section. And
Correct.
as they talked about it and they processed it, they chose to stay home and birth at home because she was already in labor. And then that way they were able to have more control over how
Correct.
long they got to keep Liam and what they could do with Liam before having the coroner's office come pick him up.
And I think it is absolutely understandable to say, I want this C-section.
Absolutely.
And what was helpful, I think, for Jillian in that moment was actually one of the midwives said to her, consider the recovery.
Yes. And the risk to future pregnancies as
and the
well.
risk for future pregnancies. And those were the two, I think, kind of markers that Jillian really camped on. Oh, yeah, I don't want to have to recover from a C-section if I don't have to.
Right.
And I don't want to risk future, and because she knew she was going to want to have another home birth
Mm-hmm.
in a subsequent pregnancy. And she said, the last thing that I need is to have to, because the struggle to find a midwife, and that was part of her story, right?
Mm-hmm.
The struggle to find a midwife was already hard enough. If you have to say, I'm also a stillbirth mom and I'm also a C-section mom, that really limits your options for what you might find as a home birth
Right.
option. And so
giving her that time gave her the opportunity to think futuristically instead of
Correct.
just in the
moment. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then after that, I think it was, tend to the real immediate need.
Okay.
The real immediate need at that point was, okay, you need some more rest. You need some food. You need to be comforted. You need to be in the space. Who do you want to know? Who needs to be notified, right? Her father, of course, was out of town, so we had to call him to come. She wanted her pastor to come.
Mm-hmm.
Her brother and two sisters. One sister was already here. She wanted them to come. Her in-laws, so everybody who was in the immediate circle. I think her sister-in-law was unfortunately unable to come because she lives in New York. But everybody else was able to come, see her, hug her, pray with her, cry with her. And that was part of the process. She needed to know that all of these people were in it with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then they left. Except for this, the two sisters and my husband, of course, stayed downstairs. But that was important to her to know that her support system was in place.
Yeah.
The midwives said, you know what, we're going to go away because you're not in labor. And we don't know why this happened. Maybe we will find out, as things progress. But as long as you are not running a fever, your blood pressure is fine, you're not bleeding, as long as there is no clinical reason for us to be here, we're going to go away
Yeah.
because you just need to be with your family and you don't need us hovering. So that was the next best thing, just meet the immediate need. And in that space, then it's going to be unique to every person.
Mm-hmm.
What's your fear? What do you think is going to happen next? What do you want to happen next? And letting her dictate with her questions, or I want to go outside. I want to go take a bath. Like, it's just letting her express whatever she needed to express, and absolutely validating her when she says, this is not fair, this is stupid, I'm gonna give birth to a baby that's dead, there's no reward at the end, I'm doing all this hard work and there's no reward. You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. This is the hardest thing anybody should ever have to do. Nobody should have to do this. Like,
Right.
just jump into that space with her. And like, in your mind, you might know that something she's saying is, that's not quite.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, like, just validating in those moments, whatever she's saying. And if there was something, you can redirect a little bit, but really it's just letting her respond to whatever she wants to talk about. And let's also be clear that, there's a dad.
Right.
I don't think we talk enough about dad shock.
Right.
Because we all know, as birth workers, that dads aren't quite sure what to do. And if you give them something to do while they're in labor, here, push her back here, or, touch her hips there, or give her some water, or give her a coat. Like, dads feel very attentive and very loving and very responsible for those tasks. But when you add in the stillbirth component, dad is grieving too. Right. And he does not know what to do now. So being sensitive to what does dad need in a different way is really important too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Jillian touched on that a little bit about how one of the main reasons she chose to stay home is because Will still wanted to catch the baby, and she didn't know if that'd be an option in the hospital. And, definitely there was a lot of thought from you guys put into his needs too, but I think so often the dads get overlooked.
Correct. Yeah. And even, just the emotional stuff, right? I think they're even starting to talk about is it postpartum paternal disorder or something like that? Like the dads who are going through depression and anxiety, and, grief has its own process that is completely separate from postpartum mood disorders.
Yeah.
And we know that if you're not moving in the process, which is a cyclical process, like one day you're angry, the next day you're sad, and the next day you're kind of maybe accepting what's going on, but you think, okay, well, now I'm going to get better. No, then anger comes again, or the sadness comes again, or it's just there's no rhyme or reason to how people grieve. And if they get stuck, it's called complicated mourning. And that stuck process, that's what leads to the deeper issues of depression that really then need treatment.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, often we talk about dads will postpone their grief.
Yes.
They put it kind of on a shelf because they're taking care of mom. That's their primary concern. And that usually happens for about a year. And then mom's doing better, usually by a year. She's gotten past that first anniversary. And, there's just some statistics about the ebb and flow of how women grieve after a loss.
Okay.
after mom starts to feel like she's getting some ground back underneath her feet, then dad kind of collapses a little bit because
Right.
because now mom is strong enough. And I think that shocks both of them then,
Yeah.
because wait, I thought you were doing so good and I'm doing so good, but now and now we're starting to have marital kind of conversations, because it's so confusing.
Yeah.
So talking about the emotional stuff and being you don't have to have the answers. You just need to create the space for the conversation. How you feeling today? Is this a sad day? Is this a mad day? Is this a joy day? What are you finding, to do with yourself? Or, um, what's bringing you joy? What's dragging you down? Are you able to get out of bed every day? That's an easy question.
Hmm.
It doesn't have a whole lot of shame base to it, right? And I am certainly not one to speak to all of the clinical levels because I don't have that. Those. It's kind of out of my scope of
Yeah.
practice, right? But I think it's really easy enough for us as doulas to say, were you able to get up and get breakfast
Yeah.
today? Yeah,
Well, and even like you were talking about before, kind of prepping doulas ahead of time, or not doulas, prepping clients ahead of time, or, not that we want to talk about that a ton, but to have it in our back pocket to say, okay, I know, Dad, you are wanting to focus on mom right
yeah,
now, but you have feelings to process too. Even to just give them this warning of like, this is what it might look like. And you need to know
yeah,
in a year's time, if dad hasn't processed yet, he's going to start processing then.
correct.
And, just kind of having those conversations with families, not being afraid to say, okay, here's what it might look like in the future now that you've experienced this loss, and to just give heads up. And then, to give resources for,
Absolutely.
more appropriate help past what we can offer.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is not to script it exact, right? There's no
Yeah.
two labors that are the same, and there's no two deliveries that are the same, even for the same mama, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you might be able to say, "Oh, I know when you get to the transition phase, you kind of do this," and dads know that, right?
Right.
"Oh, I've seen you in labor before. I know you're in labor." You can say that, in regards to stillbirth, but you really probably ought to open that box a little wider to say this could happen, this
Yeah.
might happen, this could be what we see, this, don't be surprised if, right?
Mm.
uh, we don't know exactly how labor is going to go. um, it usually is longer because it's in a much more emotional process.
Yeah.
So going back to giving mom time,
Right.
as long as all the clinical indicators are safe enough for her to let her labor.
Yeah. They
So
should be able to keep being able to do that.
yeah.
Okay, so is there anything else you want to add before we finish up?
Backed by the most up-to-date science and research, we bring you the best prenatal on the market. Full Well is an amazing prenatal vitamin formulated with the best of the best ingredients and bioavailable nutrient and mineral forms that help to fill in nutrition gaps for mom and baby. These prenatal vitamins are tested for consistent dosing and heavy metals and then verified by a third party for every single batch. That way, you know what you are buying is truly what you need.
Not only does Full Well have an amazing prenatal, they also carry women and men's fish oil, a men's multivitamin, a fertility booster, and an amazing Nourished Nerves calming tincture, which is one of our favorites. We are both so happy to announce that we can offer you guys a 10% discount on your first order. So you just have to use the code TNBT10. So that's the Natural Birth Talk, TNBT10. The link is in the description below. You can insert that code into the coupon code box to save. Hey, Tiffany, do you have any tips for someone who pee-pees their pants a little bit when they say jump or sneeze? I'm just asking for a friend.
Actually, I have a fantastic suggestion that can be done in the comfort of your own home and was created by published researchers with a background in exercise physiology and physical therapy. It's called Tighten Your Tinkler.
Oh my gosh, silly name, but it must have some serious results.
Yeah, learn more by listening to the audio testimonial in the description or use code TNBT50 for $50 off the signature program.
Hey, listener, do you want a comprehensive yet concise and inexpensive online at your own pace natural birth education course to help you prepare for natural birth, pregnancy, and postpartum? Then check out the description below for that and our helpful products guide. Now back to the show.
I think one of the thoughts that I have as a disclaimer is because of my experience. I'm a doula, I'm a nurse, I'm a student midwife. I've had training, coordinator, bereavement training, counselor training. That did set me up, right? To be well prepared. Like the mom needs to have the opportunity, the mom and dad need to have the same opportunities to do this. Like this is my pat phrase, and I kept saying this, you get to do this once. You only get to do this once. So if you want to bathe your baby, if you want to dress your baby, if you want to take pictures of your baby, if you want to cut hair, if you want your baby, like what experience, like one of the, it's still pretty precious to me. One of the thoughts that I, really encouraged Jillian, why didn't you sit in the rocking chair? And we moved the rocking chair from my office into the dining room just because that's what moms do with their babies.
Yeah.
When they're born, they rock their babies. And it was the last set of pictures that we took of her with Liam and Will. And it was such a sweet final expression of a really hard experience that she had, was that she was able to rock her baby and give him a kiss, wrap him in a blanket. And that's a once in a lifetime. She's never going to get to rock that baby again, right? And so that, I think, is the most important thing too, is that we can offer moms, what does that look like to you?
Yeah.
Don't miss this opportunity. And we know pictures are important. So you can tell mom, if she goes, no, I never want to see them, that's okay. I'm going to take them anyway. And I will put them in an envelope. They'll be sealed and nobody will ever have to look at them. But I guarantee you, they always want to look.
Yep.
Because they have nothing else to remember. So what I was really, that kind of was a tangent, but really what I was going to say was, because I've had so much experience in birth work, not everybody has that level of experience, right? I can become very clinical, even with my own daughter, and I can, separate out. I am not your mom. I am not your doula. I am, your nurse right now, and I am going to take your blood pressure. That's not every doula's scope of practice, right? I think Jillian, shared that when she had been contracting so hard and she was concerned about the baby's position or something, I listened for the baby's heart rate. That's not doula scope of practice.
Right.
That's nursing scope. That's not even what a mom would do or a grandmother would do, right?
Yeah.
That's a nursing scope of practice. But I have that licensing. So I want to make that disclaimer that, as doulas, we are operating within our scope of practice. I would not counsel my daughter Jillian now in grief.
Right.
I would counsel her to get a counselor, go get a postpartum, bereavement counselor. Right. I can talk to her about her sad days and I can talk to her about her mad days, but I cannot clinically help her, right? So I think it's really important when you are working with someone who has a fetal loss to figure out what you know and what you don't know.
Yeah.
And get help for that mom. That doesn't mean that you have to stop being the doula. It means maybe you get another doula who will come in alongside of you and train you how. I would absolutely do that. If someone called me and said, hey, I just had a stillbirth, I know you had one, would you be here? Absolutely. Because that's how that doula has a relationship with that mom. I want to help and support that doula and raise up more doulas that can help moms stay home
Right.
That is their, birth plan choice. Because, especially in Jillian's situation, there was no high risk concern at any
Right.
point in time. And she was able to have the birth that she loved. She felt safe. She felt cared for. Her midwives were excellent. They did a phenomenal job of respecting her, giving her time, letting her make the decisions. And she was able to birth her son the way she wanted, into her husband's hands, onto her chest, and then to have him for the rest of the time that she was allowed to have him. And that would be my, kind of final comments. Help moms recognize you can still have the best birth you can have with the worst outcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then don't be afraid to seek help after that, because
Absolutely.
anybody's going to need help after something like that.
Absolutely. You have to debrief it. That's another, secondhand trauma is a real thing. And I'm still processing,
Right.
the loss. In several, like my student midwife mind is going, what did we do? What did we miss? My doula mind is, what could I have done better? How could I have helped my daughter more? My, mother heart is broken because I saw my daughter grieving. And then my grandmother heart is going, I haven't had a chance to talk about that yet, because
Right.
all these other processes need to, but it's coming. I can feel it. It's debriefing on its own. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about Liam and Jillian. And
yeah, it's such an important topic to talk about, like you said, because this isn't something that we usually talk about as doulas, because it's so rare. But rare does not mean it's non-existent. And we live in a world where no matter what we do, sometimes these things happen and there's no way to prevent it sometimes.
Yeah, and I think to tell a doula, when her client calls and says, oh my gosh, I just found out this really bad news, and my doctor is saying, my midwife sent me to the OB, or, whatever that, morphs into, or whatever, to be able to say to her, you can have time. You could pause, you can make some different decisions. You could still have your home birth if you wanted to. Like, let's talk about there are really serious risks that can come from a fetal loss. Moms can get really, really, really sick. And I did tell Jillian that, but she didn't get really, really, really sick.
Right. There are signs of that coming. And that's usually with longer, baby's been gone for a longer time.
Yes. And so there were no risks that we needed to transfer out for.
Yeah.
And so being able to, just for doulas even to know, it's possible.
Yeah.
You can support a mom at a home birth through a fetal loss, and moms do incredibly well. Yeah. And so, that news needs to get out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on and for sharing and giving that perspective. Because like I said, it's just a really important perspective that it doesn't get talked about enough.
No, it doesn't. But, we keep making waves, and we keep, breaking through the walls, and women are getting helped and finding just empowerment. Jillian, I don't know if she said this we call her muscles now, because of what she was able to do. That's an inside family joke. Nobody calls you muscles. Her brother said, we call you muscles now. So it was really sweet. Yeah.
That closeness and connection was still able to come out of that situation. That's really beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on. Listeners, if you have any questions, reach out at contact@thenaturalbirthsite.com. If you want to take a few minutes to rate my podcast, Tiffany and I would be forever grateful for that. And if you have any comments or any stories you'd like to share, again, contact@thenaturalbirthsite.com or at The Natural Birth Site on Instagram and Facebook. You guys can reach out to us that way. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you in the next episode. Hi, Rachel Manns again. If you want to learn more, please subscribe to and rate this podcast, and head over to thenaturalbirthsite.com to check out our online natural birth education course, birth story blog, YouTube channel, and more.